Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another interview on the Art of Intervention Project Summit, where we're doing this to talk about addiction and recovery and transformation, and it is a process. But today we get to talk about the process of moving people from addiction to recovery to transform lives through the art of intervention, really. We're talking about interventions today, which is really exciting. So, Linda, how would you describe yourself? And then we're going to kind of get into life and your story and what you do and all that great stuff.
How would I describe myself? Well, I would think that people would say that I'm kind and humorous and creative, because you have to use a lot of strategy and intervention, as you know. And I think people would say I'm very prideful. And really what you see is what you get. Like a lot of people, they can't believe I'm a counselor sometimes, because they say, like, it doesn't feel like counseling, right? And that makes me feel good when I hear that, because it means that we're connecting and we're building that connection to want to talk more. So I like that part. Of course I use strategy and clinical kind of language, but I don't do it in a way that scares people.
Yeah. That's great. So we're talking to Linda Lane Devlin, everybody, and she's coming to us from Canada, which is a lot of fun. And interventions might be different in Canada and South Africa and Asia and Australia. Who knows? But the intervention is a process. So why did you even want to get into this world of interventions?
Okay, that's a good question, because when I was working, I worked in the healthcare system. Like, I worked in addiction services for the government for a long time, 5 years. And then I worked in stroke care for a while, which was really interesting, because I learned about the pain of someone having a stroke is similar to the pain of somebody who has an addiction and the burden on the family, right? And then I worked as a director for employment services with people with addictions and mental health. And when I was working in the system, I was helping make decisions around funding and things like that, and navigating the system for people with addictions and mental health. And it showed me what wasn't there, and it showed me what needed to be there, and it also showed me what they were doing. And so everybody tries, everybody works in their own corner, but I felt the thing that was missing and the gap that was there was that families weren't involved with people's recovery process very much, and that they would become completely street entrenched at times and marginalized. And then, they'd overdose and end up in hospital, but there was no family present to help them with love and support, to say, let's go try something right now. They would just give them a naloxone kit and send them on their way. And some of the people were overdosing 6-7 times a day here in Vancouver. So there's a lot of reasons why I do this, because I think that we need people that can help navigate what's out there for families, and also to include the family. Like, when you can. Of course you can't all the time, but when you can, why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a family disease, right? Or a family
Yeah.
illness. Family, we can get grammatically correct, but the bottom line is it stinks and it affects families and people around, and it's hard. Is it different in Canada than, like, say, other parts of the country, other parts of the world, as far as
Well,
the systems and everything?
yeah. In Canada, like, we have different provinces too, right? Just like you have states in America. And, I've done some interventions in America, and I've done them here. And I went down and visited some of the treatment programs down in California and in Florida and uh, Albuquerque and places like that. So I went in, and, the treatment programs are very similar. They're very similar. But intervention, because of the mandate and the drug policy in each province here in Canada, you have to kind of go with what is the treatment readiness for individuals? What are the kind of policies that the province and the funders are providing, and what are the gaps? So sometimes I'm bringing people into different provinces for treatment because it's the best for them, and then still trying to stay connected to the family. So I don't know if they're quite different, but treatment is different. There's a two-tiered treatment system here in Canada, and it's sad because you can only get treatment if you have money. And so I think it's similar but you have insurance down there in America. So, some people will get it and some people won't. But up here, family members are struggling because there's wait lists, and what wait lists do to people that are using drugs or alcohol is that you can't get them in the window of opportunity to the help that they need and when they're ready. So, Canada is probably, you just have to adjust around working in your country to be able to provide them the best service. Yeah.
Yeah. Why should someone use an interventionist like yourself instead of just kind of trying to go at it and help their loved one them as a family unit?
Right. Well, I mean, we come with credentials and expertise, and and we've been working in the industry and the field for a long time. So we want to make sure that we can help a family navigate what's out there. I mean, they go on Google, right? Like most families are just Googling help, and you can get really manipulated that way. And so what we try to offer at our services is that we help families see that to go it alone is kind of dangerous, and there's so many surprises that happen with intervention, and you need a risk assessment in order to really find out if you're heading into trouble or the family is. And I've been in a couple of those situations where it becomes volatile and you have to know what to do. And so when families, they have a really hard time being assertive too when they've lost their power to the drug user, right? Or the identified patient, and they don't have a voice anymore. And and family dynamics, the way they work, you have to get in there and help change that system, right?
Yeah, and you have to know how to navigate this system and know like the proper
Absolutely.
treatments and who's sketchy, who's not, and all those kind of
Yeah.
things to have that huge guidance. Do you ever do you have a story that kind of goes along with your life that connects families to like how the heck do you know how to help someone with an intervention?
Yeah, I do. I'm like almost 24 years clean myself and in a program of recovery, and I've went through treatment a couple times. One when I didn't want to be there, and one where I finally did want to be there, and the pain was great enough. But what I learned was that I could have, really younger years, I wish there would have been an interventionist that would have helped me see what my life could be like, without drugs and coping the way I was. And I family systems work and family of origin work, like my family was really dysfunctional at times, and we were just trying to survive. My mom died when we were young, and so we had to learn how the family system works at that point when when you think about avoidance and like trying to deal with issues. And so I went right into using drugs. And and then what comes with that is the lifestyle of using drugs. And so your beliefs change, your family values change, like you do all the things that you say you'd never do. And then when you come into recovery, like I just am grateful, and I do believe that I'm a better person because of the challenge, though, because of the pain. And but I also want to be able to help families know that they can get out of that, and they can get out of the codependency, and to really know where you end and someone else begins, because I couldn't gauge that, like all through my addiction. I couldn't gauge that, and I've had to learn that in recovery. And it takes time. It takes a long time sometimes. So
It It
yeah.
does. Yeah. Those blurred lines are hard. It was this image I did a weekend with my son recently, and it was kind of about like the weekend of purity and kind of talking about relationships and good, bad. And it was like these Play-Doh things, right? And like, you're the yellow guy, you're the green guy, or she's the green girl. And you get to know each other, right? And you stop becoming like a whole person, you feel like, because you just so intertwined that now it's just a mesh of green instead of
Yeah.
blue and yellow. And that's what you get to help families undo. So let's walk some families through this real quick. They call you, and your
Hmm.
company is called Interventions on Demand,
Hmm.
and they call you up and they say, Linda, I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. Help. What
Yeah.
happens from that point forward?
Okay, so I provide like a free consultation, and I usually will try to find out as much information without going into the whole assessment of the family. But they're first and foremost telling me that they're someone they love, is using substances, and it's a problem. And it's a problem, and they tell me how it's affecting the family. And so that's really good. That's the starting point of saying to them, like, okay, I'll tell you what I do, and what I do is more of a case management model. There's a lot of models of intervention that I kind of bring all together into, assessing the family in the right way to really determining the course of and the path to recovery that is going to work for not just the individual, for the family as well. And so my interventions go like 3 months at least, just to try to work with the family while the person is in treatment, or if they're not willing to go to treatment, I still work with everybody to try to at least regain some quality of life. And so when they're calling me, I set up an assessment, and really, I don't go in building a contract with them right away. Like I just, I talk about services. I have a service description of what the intervention process is going to be like for them. And I try to tailor it to, like, it's family centered and it's client centered. So I talk about all the services that I know about, and that we would, come up with options for treatment and different types of treatment, because we need to understand their values, their beliefs, whether 12-step models would work for them, whether, we measure their recovery capital. We look at their human capital, their physical capital, their spiritual capital. Like, we're looking at everything for understanding. You've got this bank account, what's in it, right? Like, of recovery, it's a recovery bank account. And, recovery capital is a really good way to view families and individuals around what they can do to help their loved one, and how can they stay involved and participate without disrespecting the process of privacy and confidentiality for the person getting the help. So sometimes they don't want family involved, and they're going to tell you that. Right?
Yes, they
I'll
will.
go if you just leave me alone, right? And so we try to get in there as quickly as we can too, because as you know, like addiction, you have to move very quickly, because it moves very quickly, and it's destroying and killing families, and it's killing individuals. Yeah.
Families that feel like they've lost control, right? How much influence can they actually have when guided the way you guide them to bring change about for the loved one?
Yeah, well, we're tapping into the love, right? The love, and hopefully connecting with the person that they know it's the right thing to do. And they don't always like, intervention. And so sometimes I don't surprise them. I say, we're having a family meeting, and we really want you to be there, because if you're not there, then decisions are going to get made, and you really want to be a part of that. And I really stress the love of the family. Like, people aren't intervening and rallying around somebody that they don't love. Like, they're trying to and offer them the gift of help, right? Like, and usually it's a buffet, right? Like, if you want this, we'll go this way. If you want, like outpatient or whatever it is that's going to work for the individual, you have to really assess that, right? And I'm sure you know.
Well, that's the great thing as we educate families on this, that knowing that sometimes they think treatment is going to a treatment center, but it's not. It can be also a scope all the way from going to, like a 2-year-long program in like Hawaii to rehabilitate, have a job, all the way down to just get off your rear end and go to a recovery meeting, and you can find it there. Like, kind of like I did. Like, I didn't have to go through treatment and stuff. It was just divine intervention. But not everyone has the ability to go to treatment and these things too. And I've in your emails you send out are great. The content you create to send out through interventions on demand is awesome. And I know in our conversation things you mentioned, kind of like bringing up like the poorest postal code in like Vancouver. Tell us how dark can it really get?
Well, I mean, in the last month, we've had like a lot of overdose, over hundreds of overdoses in the last month. So it's, I used to work it was a clinic health center right in the grips of Maine and Hastings, which is Hastings Street is like the poorest postal code in the world, really. And it's all drug users. It's the injection sites, safe supply, like all of those things that are trying to just housing first, trying to get people just into services. And then you can build the connection to get them to recovery. But what's missing down there is that link to recovery. And so that's what our advocacy work is to do, is to help, the policymakers and the funders to understand that recovery is possible, and there's still different pathways within that continuum. And so, Vancouver, I'm sure, like, you think about, I used to hear about New York City and the heroin overdoses that would happen when I was a kid. I'd hear about that. And so then we gravitated towards Vancouver because that was probably the next city that was, the place to get all the drugs. So people are coming out from other provinces to get to Maine and Hastings because they know what they can get. And that's the sad reality of it. And so people down there are very poor. They're, a lot of homeless people. And there's also a lot of elderly that are living down there that also are really marginalized and don't get help. And so it's a mess. If there's 10 cities, it's disgusting, the conditions that when you're just using drugs and it feels like nobody cares, you do whatever you want. And it's infested. And so, and I'm sure every city in America has spots like that and areas like that. So we have to, as a world, really try to impact that and show them that there is recovery available to them. And no matter what that looks like we have to offer some hope. So I'm a strong believer in hope, and then building the faith that takes that inside us all, we have that intrinsic motivation that says, I can do this. I can, I'm going to give it a try, and I'm going to, believe that I can. And then a bunch of people believe in you, that you can do it. And then you start to believe in yourself. So no matter what's going on in Vancouver, I still believe it's possible to get them, every single one of them, help. Every single one of them. It's just about giving them the pathway to do that.
Amen to that. And you can look at, the example you're just giving to Vancouver, to even to go all the way up to, the top of Wall Street with, millionaires and billionaires that are exactly in the same state, right? Of just desperation, feeling lost, using drugs. I mean, addiction does not discriminate. If you're black, white, Jewish, Christian, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. It will come get you.
Yeah, a lot of the clients I intervene on are not from the downtown east side, and they're, lawyers that went out to a party drinking too much and did a line of cocaine, and they're in the hospital overdose from fentanyl being in it. And they've got 2 kids at home and a beautiful wife and a beautiful life, and they're still going out there and taking that risk. And today's environment, like, you don't know what you're using. And so, like, a lot of the people, I work on a lot of youth intervention, and youth intervention is difficult because, I don't know, like 15, 16-year-old little kids, they think they know everything about life already, and they don't think that, they need the help because I'm not as bad as you, or not as bad as Vancouver, downtown east side. And comparison is deadly. Like, it's not good to compare, because your feelings of low self-worth and low ambition and low self-esteem are just the exact same feeling that I would feel if I felt low self-esteem and low self-worth. So to get it that young, like, I worked with an 11-year-old just this last month, where she's just on games, and she's gaming till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And her mother didn't realize that because she wouldn't listen to mom, she was doing her own thing. So mom lost the power. Mom lost the power of parenting in that process. And she said, well, I think she needs treatment. I go, well, why would she need treatment? I think you need some help too, like around how you can parent this kid. And so she went away. She didn't really like that at first, but then she realized, like, she didn't have the boundaries, and it was a real struggle for her. So you've got to understand who needs the help. Sometimes I do intervention, and it isn't just for the identified patient. You walk in and they say, well, mom, you drink 2 bottles of wine a day, and so you're trying to adjust and help with the family. Yeah.
They should call it mirror interventions. Let's look in the mirror real quick. Yes. And say, okay, we're going to reflect back to you.
Yeah.
Things. 'Cause it is hard. No matter how you look at it, it's hard. Parents feel like they failed. Spouses feel like they failed. People feel like they failed But the bottom line is, if someone wants to use, they're going to use a lot
Yeah.
of times, and it's not a moral issue. There's something they're seeking. So what you've seen like around the countries and in your own life, what do you think people are really trying to find with drugs or gambling or shopping? What are they trying to
Mm.
fill?
Oh my God, I don't even want to talk about shopping, but
Yeah.
I will.
Okay, hold on a
Uh,
second. Let me call my shopping interventionist. We
I
got one in
might need an
Canada. Yeah.
intervention. Yeah. No, I think it's escapism, really. Like, I think that it's avoidance. If you really look at attachment theory and how we deal with our lives, like sometimes it stems from our belief system as a child to where we learn how to cope with outside influences. And today there's so many outside influences that can impact our lives and feel good. You know, like those things, people don't use heroin because they don't like it. They use it because they love it. And it becomes that primary relationship, and everything else comes secondary. So when you understand that, even from your own story, right? Like, I know how to escape. I know, I ran from relationships because I was afraid they're just going to die anyway. And so, when you understand yourself enough to know that why we do drugs and why we use drugs and why 16-year-old kids are using drugs, sometimes it's because all the other kids are, and sometimes it's because they don't want to deal with how they feel about themselves. And that's tough in this world, because there's bullying, there's all kinds of things that happen and influences on kids where most of them don't feel good about themselves. So, they're smoking, it's like-minded behavior. So if you surround yourself, if you go to a bar long enough, you have a drink. If you get a haircut, you get a haircut, right? If you go to a barbershop. So, it's those things that influences in life that are, COVID is a really good example of how people are coping right now. Like, even people that aren't in recovery or addicted or anything, like how they're coping right now with the world being unknown. Like, again, if you look at your family systems and values, you see kind of two camps going on. You see one which is facing it head on, and we should be afraid and we should be taking all the precautions. And then you've got someone on the complete other side. Oh, this is a conspiracy. And that all depends on how they view the world, right? And so it comes back to, there's a lot of work, being done, though, I think, in the world around hope and around self-help. And I think we just need to continue on that, because we can't change the whole world, right? But I'll tell you, family systems really impact who we are.
Very much so. And we have no clue. And then you get married, right? And then you're like, you get the both sides
Yeah.
of the coin that come in there. And then you have kids and you spew it on them. And it's this really interesting cycle. But how important do you feel like community is for people in the recovery realm of families or individuals?
Well, I don't know. There's a speaker, he's really well known, Johan Hari, and he says that the cure for addiction is connection. And you know what? There's a lot of truth to that. And if you look at recovery capital, you're looking at therapeutic communities and social models of recovery are the ones where you can go to treatment. As soon as you're done treatment, it's up to you whether you participate or not, right? And so with a social model and a community model, you build these friendships and relationships that kind of hold you accountable. Where are you? Where have you been? And they get you with a conscience, a recovery conscience, I call it. You have to have a recovery conscience in order to always do the next right thing. And so you're going to, experience, this recovery community, like, because there's all kinds of things that are included in that, whether it stems from getting, the 12-step model to the SMART programs. SMART programs are still a community model of people getting together and talking about recovery and then putting it into practice. So it doesn't matter which model of philosophy that you're going to practice. It's like any diet. You try one of them and they work. Right? And so community models are really good because they keep people out of isolation, because isolation is a very dangerous place to be for anybody who's in the mind, because it's a brain disease, right? In the mind, I say you're in bad company when you're in there alone. So I do think that, and I learned that along the way. So I didn't come up with that one.
There's a
But
lot of good phrases in recovery, right? And it's like,
there is,
yeah,
there
yeah.
is.
You know what they say about that, right? Though, when you hear someone say something, you can quote them the first time, like, "Oh, Linda told me that. I learned it from her." And then the next time you say it, you're like, "That was some woman in recovery. I can't remember who said it." And the third time, it's now yours.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
That's true. I got to remember that one, Rob.
Yeah, you can remember that one
Yeah.
as well. Well, I mean, obviously, it's amazing what you're doing. You're helping families all around the country and wherever they need you.
Yeah.
There you are. And what would you kind of say to maybe that family that's on that cusp, right? They want to take this step to reach out to you or an interventionist or somebody for help, but they're
Mm.
just afraid that if they do, their loved one's going to hate them forever.
Yeah. And and I think it takes the interventionist to really work with the family ongoing for a while to help them see that they've made the best decision they could. Because really, what and it's a difficult conversation to have, but you're saying, he's going to die in your house if so they're so afraid of him going out and succumbing to the disease of addiction, that they're missing that what's happening right now in front of their eyes is something that they can do something about. And as a parent or as a family member, if you do the best you can, you're going to at least not feel responsible, right? Because a lot of parents, like you said, feel like it's a failure. And so families need to understand that that it is a process, and that, it's not their fault. And, the NAR programs and everything say the 3 C's: you didn't cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. And so, but you can do something about it. You absolutely, as a family member, can do something about it. So what are the steps? And sometimes when moms feel that way, or I'll take them aside and I'll start doing some work with them around their own worth and their own lives and their own self-care. And so that they can feel like they're doing the best they can, but their whole focus isn't on just the addict. And because lots of kids in the family are feeling neglected because the attention is on the addict, right? And so I like a wellness wheel, where you're looking at a person not just because of their addiction, but you're looking at them as a whole, where it's nutrition, exercise, purpose, what they want to do as a career, how do they take care of themselves for self-care, how do they help others, how do they have fun now that they're in recovery? Like, who knows how to have fun, right? They don't think it's going to be fun. And meanwhile, my life is surrounded by laughter and humor and making fun of ourselves most of the time, and really good times. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't give it up for anything. Yeah.
That's great. And for some reason, it keeps popping into my head as you're talking earlier. 11-year-old, 11-year-old, 11-year-old. What does a family do when they have a kid that's 11, 12, 13, 14 that, they're not 18 yet? And how do they really help someone? Because I know there are places like in the United States where they can go, and it's basically like, there's guardianships to get them there, and they can get them there, and they're at a camp, and a wilderness camp and stuff like that. What do you really do for a child that's under 18 to get them help that doesn't want it?
That's my everyday life up here. And it's challenging because even the system of care doesn't look at addiction as self-harm. And so, I worked with a kid that was 16 with an eating disorder, addiction issues, and bipolar. And so, and personality disorder, where they were just constantly in crisis, constantly in crisis. And so, working with that family is about helping them just build the skills to be able to parent, right? Because they still have to parent. Those are youth, right? And they still need that parenting. And so they need some help with that. And then the kids, I work with a lot of young kids, and you're teaching them to take direction, and that they don't. I always say to them, and they don't like it, but I say, you know what, you are 16 and 16 years about life right now. That's what you know. And do you know that brains don't even develop until you're 25? So they become little politicians around marijuana and all of it, right? So they just think they've got it going on, and it's not going to happen to them. I've been trying to help parents keep their kids at home right now because of COVID, and it's been very challenging because they're out using drugs with all kinds of people sharing everything, and the parents are compromised. Like, they have health issues where if they get COVID, they're not going to make it. And so it's trying to have those family case management meetings that just gets them thinking about it. I don't think lecturing is the way to go. I think you have to use positive reinforcement as much as you can. Like the craft model is really good for looking at positive reinforcement, but not with drugs. You know what I mean? And so you try to build them in other ways and show them that if you do this, you're going to get a good result. So they try to do their school and try to do those things. So we try to limit the harm. And then, you know, when it gets bad enough, we have to get in there and get them to youth treatment. So I've got about 5 kids in a youth treatment center out here right now in Vancouver, and they're doing great. So sometimes you got to go there for even under the age. Yeah.
Well, you are doing a lot from a lot of different angles. And I sit and think about, you know, again, you're talking about, you know, doing, you know, family weekends and going over here to help this family and this family and this family. And then there's Linda in the middle of all this. So how do you take care of yourself?
Well, that's a really good question, because like I said, shopping isn't the answer for me because I love it. And it could become another drug. So I don't do that as much. I have a great relationship with my kids.
Hey, look at that. My dog's saying hi.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, he's saying hi real quick. So
That's
hi,
great.
Max.
Hi,
There
Max.
we go. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right,
I've got a great support group. I still continue to do recovery work every year. I still do 12 steps in my life, and I work on them with a step sisters, and we still continue to work on ourselves. I have a great marriage. I do exercise a lot. I just have a really balanced life. I practice what I preach, and you know, when I'm feeling struggling, like I practice codependency too. Believe me, I have those 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's a process. And, you know, I catch myself, at least the knowledge is the power, like, to change. And so it doesn't mean that we all are perfect people trying to, you know, project that onto other people. I don't think that's real. And I don't think I'm a savior either. Like I think it's the family that does the work. And I have to do the work in my own life. I have to participate in it. I have to get well. I have to continue to work on myself and get more self-development. So in my wheel is self-development all the time. I'm always taking more education. I'm in a psychology diploma right now, you know, and I've already had psychology in my early years, but I want to stay refreshed. I want to stay current. And I just did an addiction medicine diploma as well, where you have to learn and keep learning how the government's dealing with things, and you've got to be up and current on what's going on as an interventionist, because then you can try to make that work for you too, right?
Yeah. Well, again, you're highly educated. You've done, you know, so many things to build up your wheelhouse of tools. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us at the Art of Intervention Project Summit. Glad you got to meet Max over there. He makes it on some shows every now and then, barking and saying hello to people. So this was great. And just thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm definitely going to be a follower now too for you and your podcast. So I think that's great. And if you ever need me, just give me a call, and we'll be friends for life now, Rob.
Awesome. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
It's great to have good community. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day for sure.
Yeah, thank you.